Welcome everyone to another Friday Night Crypto. I'm excited to be with you guys, and it's going to be interesting to see what Bitcoin does right now. We saw that it did close above that line we spoke about earlier, but it seems to be going back down. So let's have a look at what happens. Smokes, how are you doing? How's the week been treating you?
Oh man, it's been good. It's been an interesting week. As we discussed last week, waiting to see what Bitcoin's going to do, to see if this is purely just a bull trap and if it's actually going to continue up. But let's chat about the news that we spoke about earlier and sort of what's happening in the world and where things are going from a fundamental point of view and a news perspective, to see what we can see is happening in the market.
I agree. Look, I drew this line out on the 21st, I told you. It's just interesting to see that from a fundamental point of view, the way I'm charting this out, it's not technical, it's purely fundamental, where I think market, where price might go before we start seeing the move down into this bubble crash that needs to happen sometime or another. Now, we can't predict where the future goes, but it's interesting to see that, it's kind of climbing this line. We know that price needs to go up right now, but is it going into a bear trap? That's what I can't say from a fundamental point of view. If we look at the news, I think the one big thing that we kind of saw is that Binance is making an extremely big move, going into the side where we see they putting a big stake in one of the biggest social influencers in the world, Forbes. So it's going to be quite interesting to see what happens and comes from this. I'd like to see, whether this is going to have a big influence in the decentralized world, or let's say centralized, since they are a decentralized exchange. But it's going to be interesting to see that government can't really silence or censor them right now. They're going to have a direct stake in extremely big relationships and extremely big channels, especially towards institutions. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what kind of moves can come from this and what kind of follows suit. The fact that Forbes is even open to these discussions show that, Forbes wouldn't be making these kind of moves due to their existing relationships with government and institutions, and especially with the public. So it's going to be interesting to see what they plan to do with this going forward. I know they plan to have two directors on the board with Forbes, which will obviously have a big effect on the decisions they make going forward, especially from the crypto space. But let's have a look at what the charts are currently saying for Bitcoin. We can talk about the news, we can look at all the noise we wanted to look at, but when it comes back to the charts, show me the charts and I'll show you the news, right, Smokes?
Yes, now you're taking the words out of my mouth. Huh? Normally you're the news guy and I'm the trading guy. So 100%, I mean, it is, very interesting to see, Binance taking a stake into the whole Forbes media. Media plays a big part in sort of the world. They feed us what they think we need to know and what they want us to believe. Same with this whole pandemic that we're in, we only get what they feed us, so we can't see unless we're in the various countries what's actually happening. But interesting enough, Forbes did want the full 400 million investment. Binance paid, I think it was 200 million. So that was very interesting. Now, just speaking about this line that you drew, I know you mentioned, I think it was the 1 hour.
I was on the daily right now. When I drew it out.
Oh, you were on the daily?
Yeah.
That's interesting, because on the smaller time frames, you can actually see it a bit clearly, and that's why I wanted to go onto the smaller time frame. But if we just sort of pull a line across here, right, there's not many contact points, unless I maybe swing it like that. And we've got multiple contact points from a so-called trend line perspective. But keeping in mind, like we spoke about, I mean, we trade algo as well. And we know that institutions with, these massive supercomputers that do quant, funds and quant trading and stuff with these complex mathematical equations, that they can predict randomness. Now, we know that in human nature, it's our nature to look for patterns. And a lot of people enjoy trading patterns, and that's why they will obviously, a lot of the times when they draw these wedges and these double tops and double bottoms and these typical retail trading patterns, they will be like, oh, this is a wedge, it must be broken up. And in this case, you can see, oh, it's broken out, and you might have, gotten in on this candle, fantastic, and that, but it's not to say that that's going to happen every single time.
As we can already see, it's already breaking that line. People would say, cool, it's going to bounce off this line. We can expect, obviously, a turnaround because the market's bullish, but that's not always the case, is it?
Yeah, like you can, argue this statement, but, coming sort of back to sort of real market structure and looking at the trading and the way we analyze markets, and that we don't typically look at that things, but it is interesting if you are going to pull, your parallel channels and stuff like that. It is very interesting to see how price reacts a lot of times off these levels. Like I showed you guys earlier with some of my other tools that I use, you can quickly pick up where price is going and that. Just ignore this banner. But again, looking at this channel, it broke out, it's traded in this sort of upper channel now, and now we're seeing price breaking down quite aggressively. And this is only on the 4 hours. So price is already at 42,700, and it was just hovering above 43,500 when we spoke previously. So this is very interesting. But what I want to point out, based on the charts, and if we jump onto the 1 hour, we can see it a little bit more clearly, is we can see a bit of a Wyckoff distribution model playing out here. Now, Wyckoff is a much sort of more advanced technique that you can use and utilize in your trading plan. But what we can see here is we can see that price had this preliminary supply forming, and we saw this massive burst, which obviously created a buying climax. From this buying climax, we saw this automatic rally to the downside, shifting sort of market structure, and then we saw a sort of secondary test to try and break the high, but it didn't quite break the previous high. It failed to break it, pulled back, and then started building sort of bullish order flow, where we had a new high formation here, and then we saw this sort of respecting this trend line. So, but then after this is where it gets really interesting, and I'm going to try and keep it short because I know we don't want to go too long and too much into detail into the charts, but looking at the previous high of this wick here, which was at the buying climax that we spoke about now, we can see on the 15-minute chart, we can see it a little bit more clearly. Look at this massive move. So we had a massive dump, which was on the 10th, which was yesterday, on the Thursday, and then right after that we saw a V-shaped recovery, which catapulted price up, breaking this previous high, and then saw a sharp decline, again a sort of V-shape in the downwards momentum, breaking this previous low and the structure of that, and now we saw price building up here, forming a new lower high. So this being your higher high, your new lower high, and then this is your new lower low. So what we are expecting is price to break this low and forming a new lower low, and then potentially continuing to the downside if this schematic is correct, keeping in mind not all the Wyckoff schematics, the concept is there, but the way it prints in the market is not going to be always a textbook schematic. But as we can see now, this clearly looks like the last phase of that, and that's what I would be looking at this point in time if we want to look at sort of a more advanced outlook on the market. And I mean, we've been saying this last couple of weeks, like, watch out for a bull trap, watch out for a fake out in the market, and don't be surprised if we're not going to go up just yet, because look at this previous high here as well. So we came above this level. If we just want to keep it simple for the viewers, we can see we broke above this level, but look at what the price did. Yes, we had a 50% break above, but we can see there was almost more selling pressure with multiple wick rejections of this region, showing that there is a lot of selling pressure in this region, and then forming this sort of formation that we're now seeing a potential continuation to the downside. And that's it from our side, looking at the charts.
So I think now's the perfect time to kind of have the discussion. Is crypto safe right now? And I think it really depends on where you're standing right now, whether you're a new investor or whether you're someone that's already holding crypto. I think for people who want to get into crypto right now, I think you need to learn what's happening in the market right now, because I think this is the situation we're in, the economic situation we're in is not normal. It's not. Since COVID, a lot has changed, so we can see a lot in the market still changing. And as we've just discussed, there is a rise coming, and it needs to some time in the future fall. So we don't want to just go into the market because the market's going up. We want to kind of see, where's the best place we can kind of start investing and holding for the long term. And right now, I think Bitcoin needs to go down, and like we have discussed, Bitcoin's probably going to pull the other projects with it. But the key thing is, I think, adoption. What we can see is institutions are going to be adopting into it. We've spoke about this last time, Smokes. When gold's ETF first came out, it centered on the biggest bull run ever. And when the first ETF is going to come out for Bitcoin, we're going to see mass adoption. We're going to see possibly one of the biggest, players in the world coming in, starting to push price up, and we're not going to get to these levels ever again, probably in history. So just because Bitcoin as itself as a technology, might not make sense to some people or to some hodlers, and there's better competitors, yes, there is. But if there's no adoption, then price is not going to be moving up. And right now, it seems to be leaning towards Bitcoin, that people are going to be pushing that side of it up. ETFs are coming. I'm quite excited to see who's going to be the first towards this gold rush. It might be Russia, it might be China, it might be the United States. The United States currently has the biggest stake within crypto, and they're quite stingy when it comes to regulation and greedy, but it seems like they want to get this done. They want to start investing in crypto and having, these big institutions just coming on board and opening up the floodgates.
Just keep in mind that it is going to happen. We are seeing institutions or big companies like KPMG that's added Bitcoin and Ethereum to their treasury holdings. We are going to see that, but again, I cannot state this enough. Like looking at December and looking at the markets and knowing how the markets work from institutional level, if they are also human, so they also want to buy in at the lowest price. They're not going to buy in high. Yes, they've got deeper pockets, so they can afford to ladder in on a dollar cost average perspective as the market goes up, if they're getting in a bit later than some of the other players in the game. But in order for mass adoption to happen, we need a lower barrier to entry, because the majority of people have this perception, Bitcoin is too expensive, I cannot afford it. But what they don't realize is you could still buy a piece of Bitcoin. You don't have to own a whole Bitcoin to own a part of it. It's the same with like Cougar Rands and gold. You can own a piece of gold. You don't have to have a solid 1 ounce of gold. You can own, a smaller percentage. But with cryptos, the same rules apply. So mass adoption needs to happen. And in order for them to do it, they are going to push the price down so that they can get in as low as possible. And then they're going to start running this thing. And like we've seen in the history, once Bitcoin, corrects to, a previous low or range of fair value, price rapidly increases, and you'll start seeing that snowball effect in the market. So I do believe that is, on the cards. I still think we could see lower prices at this point in time, because we haven't shown true intent in the market just yet.
Remember, Smokes, 3 years ago, right? We were all wondering whether Bitcoin would ever cross the $10,000 mark. And we were having these kind of discussions between the $5,000 mark and the $10,000 mark. And it would be amazing if it could break the $10,000 mark. I don't see Bitcoin ever going back to the $10,000 mark unless there's a big, economic collapse. But look at where we are right now. This is how far we've come. This is how far we've grown. Bitcoin and blockchain as a perspective on how we can solve a lot of solutions, it's here to stay. That's why it's definitely safe for you to invest in this kind of technology, because it is here to stay. It is going to have its up and downs because of adoption and people being new to the technology. But I think if you look at where we are right now with price, even if we get down to the 28,000 level, it's already made history that crypto in itself has come this far.
No, for sure. Look, it's just going to get increasingly, more popular. It's going to gain momentum. Yes, there is going to be a lot of manipulation in the market, but that's why we focus on the stuff that we teach in TradeAcade University. So we focus on the institutional side of the game and trading. So that gives you a higher probability of getting the best possible entries, as well as potential, identifying potential exits and stuff. So if you guys are interested in learning the way we read the market and how we trade the markets, look in the link below. There is a link to the TradeAcade University website. You can look at the courses that we offer, and you can sign up there on the website. The prices are reduced, so there will be various courses on offer that you can get your hands on. Keep in mind it is a structured curriculum, so you cannot bypass any steps. You have to go through the foundation to get to the masterclass and the advanced masterclass. But again, you don't have to buy the foundation class and then the masterclass and then the advanced masterclass. You can buy, if you know that you're happy with the masterclass, you can buy the masterclass, and that will include the foundation class for you, so you get a bit more saving there as well. Or if you want to go full swing all the way to learn all the concepts and the trading plans and strategies that we use to trade, you can use the advanced masterclass. But that's it from me. I think let's have a look at what the market's doing. If we're going to see a proper move to the downside in the next couple of hours, it's going to be very interesting to see this weekend, keeping in mind we're also almost midway through the month, which we will start seeing potentially a tapering down into the sort of last week of the month before we see some more action in the market. So let's have a look and see what happens.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So I think, guys, with that being said, please have a nice weekend. Have a look at what's going on in the market. Just be safe, don't FOMO in. And then we'll see you guys on Sunday when we do the binocular report.
And don't forget to check out our TradeAcade University website and check out our courses.
Awesome. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, guys. Cheers, bye.